Let's get some analysis. Joining me live in the studio is Senior Fellow at the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, Mark Watson. Let's start with that summit, those talks in Saudi Arabia. What can we expect to come out of them, if anything, given you would imagine President Trump's the one who's going to be decisive in any final deal?
He most certainly will be the decisive voice in the room. Look, Marco Rubio's already kind of hosing down expectations a little bit, saying, we're not going to be sitting there, quote unquote, drawing, lines on a map. He's saying, I'm just here to explore what the possibilities are for, his words, concessions. Now, that's a critical point. How far can, President Zelensky really go in offering concessions to Russia, who've invaded Ukraine? And for their part, of course, Russia's been almost silent on this throughout the whole process, other than to say they don't want peacekeeping troops from NATO or possibly anywhere in Europe, and to say their military objectives remain the same. So it'll be interesting to see what they can possibly pull out of this.
Given the Trump impact has been so huge, certainly in Europe, in terms of how Europe's responding, where are things at now in terms of that British and French-led response?
Look, I think it's actually unified Europe in a way that we probably haven't seen for a long time. That ability to just lean on the US has been knocked away, and suddenly they're forced inwards to go, well, what can we do? There's a big problem there, however, though. Even though in terms of the amount of support, in terms of dollars, given in military aid, US and UK and Europe, are roughly the same. But it's the quality and type of material that the Americans can supply, and Europe simply can't match that, particularly in air defence systems like the Patriot missile systems. So even if they do up the ante, they still can't replace everything that the US does for Ukraine.
Yeah, that gets back to Trump being one of the, if not the key figure in all of this to get this resolved. What about the Trump-Turnbull spat? I know you were in the embassy when Mr Turnbull was Prime Minister not that long ago. They said they got on well back then. Not so much, apparently.
Well, yeah, they absolutely did. The meeting there in the White House was all thank yous, and he's a great guy, and we've got a great relationship. But now that seems to have gone sour. Look, a couple of points up front. One is Malcolm Turnbull is clearly an outstanding advocate, and he did an outstanding job of advocacy for Australia with Donald Trump in 2017 in relation to the refugees issue and to the tariffs issue. But I can't help but feel there's a little bit of the old footballer, the older I get, the better I was. And if you look at the way he went through it, it was a very clinical, assemble the facts into a cogent argument that was able to convince the president there was enough in it for the United States to accept Malcolm Turnbull and Australia's reasoning. There wasn't a lot of chest bumping. There was a lot of glad handing and smiles.
Is there anyone that could have, at the moment it looks unlikely we'll get the exemption, is it possible that no one could have got an exemption this time around?
I think that's...
Given the impact of Peter Navarro,
yes,
the huge hawk within the administration who wants tariffs. And he said, we don't have allies, we've got competitors.
Yes.
That was his language.
Yes. Look, I think you're right. I don't think that the words spoken by Malcolm Turnbull will make a blind bit of difference to the outcome, as in it's not going to turn what would have been a positive result into a negative result. I don't believe that for one second. But it is a case of, with this administration in particular, of course we have a right to free speech, we have a right to say what we want, and certainly someone as well respected as Malcolm Turnbull, but be warned, there will often be consequences with this administration. They take things very personally. The president clearly did. He was tweeting at 1:30 in the morning Washington time, criticising Malcolm Turnbull. So, of course, you can say what you want, but whether you should at this particular time is another question.
And Mark Watson, just finally, it's not all... It's hard to read every play of Donald Trump and think, okay, that's a huge negative, that's a positive. What it does do, as you said, it's brought the Europeans closer together. Yes. It's made the Canadian government more popular in Mark Carney, the incoming Prime Minister in the Liberal Party.
Yeah.
Trudeau's probably more popular than he's been, and now the incoming former central banker. So it's not to simply say Trump all bad.
No.
For some allies, even when they're pushing back against him, at least politically, it can be a positive.
I think politically you're absolutely right. I think economically, however, over time, it's already causing massive, waves in world markets, and Donald Trump follows those markets very closely. If prices start rising in the US, you'll see a different perspective, I'm sure.
Mark Watson, great to get your insights as always. Thanks.
Thanks, Gil.